Okay, we'll just stick that in there.
Oh, hello there. I'm Abbey Sharp. Welcome to another edition of Toilet Talk, where I share my best tips on achieving the healthiest gut. Our question today comes from my friend Peggy. Hi Abby, I'm a few weeks pregnant, and after reading the mommy message boards, I've noticed that many moms have cut out gluten during their pregnancy. Apparently, it may reduce baby's risk of developing celiac disease. Well, my husband has celiac disease, and I would hate for my baby to have to go through all that discomfort. So does this diet change actually lessen their chances? Are there really any benefits of going gluten-free during my pregnancy? Sincerely, Pregnant Peggy. Thanks for your letter, Peggy. So a gluten-free diet has been used for a variety of health conditions, so it was only a matter of time before researchers started to investigate whether or not going gluten-free during your pregnancy can actually reduce the risk of baby developing celiac disease. So recently, we've seen a lot of people going gluten-free for weight loss reasons. However, for people with celiac disease, a gluten-free diet is imperative for preventing the risk of a lot of different health conditions and, of course, total malnutrition. So let's take a look at whether or not going gluten-free during pregnancy has any benefits for mom and babe. Recently, Danish scientists wanted to test mice to see if having a gluten-free pregnancy would reduce the risk of celiac disease in their offspring. What they found was overall, the mice that were born to moms that had a gluten-free pregnancy had a lower risk of developing celiac disease compared to the mice whose mom consumed gluten. So this is a great start, but let's not get carried away here because we know that this was only carried out on mice, so we've got a long way to go when it comes to figuring out whether or not this is a modifiable risk factor, when we also know that celiac has a really strong hereditary component. Let's look at the research on humans. A 2015 study looked at gluten intake during late pregnancy and found no link between gluten intake and the risk of celiac disease in their baby. What's important to note is that this study was observational, so researchers couldn't modify different factors that may have impacted results. So we don't have a really strong verdict when it comes to whether or not going gluten-free during pregnancy has an impact on celiac disease, but there's some other interesting trials going on. Let's talk about those. There is some new research that suggests that going gluten-free during pregnancy may reduce the risk of type 1 diabetes in babies. However, again, these are based on mice trials, so don't go cutting out gluten just yet. Aside from mom's intake of gluten during pregnancy, there are other factors that may impact baby's risk of celiac disease, including antibiotics, vitamin D, and iron. So we know that antibiotics can wreak havoc on our gut health. So researchers wanted to know whether or not this effect would be strong enough to increase the risk of celiac disease in our babies. The good news is that even though antibiotics may have an impact on baby's gut health, it does not seem to be a strong enough effect that would increase the risk of something as serious as celiac disease. So if you need to take antibiotics during your pregnancy, be sure that you do. So what about iron supplements? A lot of us mamas are told that we need to up our iron during pregnancy. Well, one study found that mothers who took iron supplements during their pregnancy had an increased risk of their babies developing celiac disease. But don't freak out, the association was not strong enough to be drawing any conclusive claims. Recently, there's been a lot of interest in the research community when it comes to vitamin D supplementation and the risk of disease. And what they found was moms who supplemented with vitamin D during their pregnancies may have had a reduced risk of type 1 diabetes and MS in their offspring. However, when it came to celiac disease, the results were underwhelming and very limited. So as a dietitian, I'm often asked when is the best time to introduce gluten to my baby's diet in order to reduce the risk of celiac disease. But what's unclear is whether or not the exposure to gluten had a protective effect throughout their lives, or if it just delayed the onset of their diagnosis of celiac disease. This is because the researchers only followed the babies for the first 2 years of life. So we need some more long-term studies before we can make conclusive claims. While this is helpful news, other research has found that the timing of gluten introduction has had no impact on the risk of celiac disease in babies. Having said that, they did concur with the other research suggesting that the introduction of large amounts of gluten may increase the risk. Well, Peggy, I hope this information has given you a bit of clarity when it comes to going gluten-free during your pregnancy and the risk of celiac disease in your baby. If you have celiac disease, then of course, be sure you're keeping a gluten-free diet for both the health of you and your baby. However, if you don't have celiac disease or gluten intolerance, I really don't see a strong association in the literature to support the idea of you going gluten-free. If you decide to cut out gluten, be sure to always be in the care of your doctor or a registered dietitian because cutting out major food groups can have implications for your baby's health and nutrition. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below with some of your burning toilet talk questions. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!